All right, in today's masterclass, I want to demonstrate the lateral raise, the dumbbell lateral raise, the seated dumbbell lateral raise, to be precise. Main reason is I see this butchered too often, okay, in terms of technique, primarily through either lifting too heavy with poor form or just simply not understanding the mechanics of the movement. Now, you can lift a weight from here to here, right? You can do that, but you've got to understand what you're doing and why you're doing it and the target muscle that you are actually hitting. So a lot of people will focus on lifting the weight because the weight's in your hand. They'll focus on lifting the weight and just generating force from that point. So they'll do, in their mind or their body will naturally just go, okay, we've just got to get it up to there. So you see a lot of people lateral raising like this. I'm actually going to come square onto the camera here a little bit more so you can see, right? So they'll end up like that. There we go. I'm going to rearrange things here a little bit so it's a little bit easier for you to understand what I'm saying. All right, there we go. So when you're weighted, you immediately just want to get the weight up and you end up in that finished position at the top. Now, yes, your shoulders are working, but it's not optimal because what you're doing is you're actually engaging a lot of bicep and the technique is poor. Therefore, you're going to potentially overload your traps as well or swing. What we want to minimize is that position. We want to get to that position. So see, if you drew a line across my shoulders right now from my thumb to my other thumb, it is horizontal. That's the finished position. So the elbows need to be higher. So what I like to say or do in terms of an analogy is imagine that you're getting your elbow pulled, okay? This part doesn't, you don't think about this part, you just think about this part. It's getting pulled up every single time. So imagine there's a rope attachment there and it's getting pulled up. So you're rotating through this. Remember, you're working your deltoid. You're not working your bicep, you're not working your forearm. If you're feeling in your forearm or your bicep, chances are the technique is wrong. So from that perspective, we want to finish there. This is our movement, there to there. Chest is always high. We don't want to be rounded and slumped, and then you're doing these ones. Chest is nice and high, you'll brace through your core. Now you can use a backrest on a bench, lean back. And if you press yourself into that seat, straight away you're going to maintain that position throughout, no matter what you do, okay? Because you're constantly pressing in. So whenever someone gets into a shoulder press or a lateral raise position, and I'm working with them from a personal training perspective, a couple of the cues I like to use is right, chest up, feet planted. Drive yourself into the seat, hold that position, and then perform the movement. So that's another thing to remember. What you will find, if you're a bigger lifter or if you're getting to that point where the weight is starting to become quite challenging and momentum starts to come into it, that is okay. There is no problem with a little bit of swing through the movement, particularly if the weight starts to get heavy for you and you're at the top end, okay? But what we don't want is, massive swinging where there's all this momentum and there's very little engagement. We want that shoulder to be working. Think of the muscle. It's a small muscle. It needs to be working at its peak all the time. So you always want to start with the foundational movements first, the baseline stuff first, okay? So get into that position first, finish that, get to a point where you know you're at your limit, and then if there's a little bit of swing from there onwards to progress, no problem, but don't overload it too quickly. Stick to a weight that you're comfortable with and don't lift too heavy too soon. Remove the ego. At the end of the day, lateral raise is working the deltoid, primarily the lateral deltoid, which is the muscle right on the side here. It's small. You don't have to lift a lot to make it progress and grow, okay? So remove the ego. If you're not progressing in terms of going up in weight, that is okay. Look for extra reps, maybe look for an extra set. Don't feel like you've got to step up to a weight that you can't physically move, or you're doing partials, or you're just out of control in terms of technique, and you finish like that, okay? We want to eradicate that. So that's my tutelage around the lateral raise. Now, if you were to introduce a standing version, again, with a standing version, there is a tendency or a habit to swing because you've got more room. You're not seated, you're standing. So you have a tendency, and you see this a lot with big, heavy dudes, big, muscular dudes, and that's fine because they're probably moving 20 plus kilos, right? We don't need to focus on that. What we want to do, technically wise, start from the hip, and you'll notice if I go side on, I actually finish there out in front of me, okay? Everyone thinks the lateral raise needs to finish there. It doesn't. We need to finish at that slight front angle, and that's why the elbow position is so important. So that's your starting point for a standing lateral raise. right? Once you're done there and you get to, again, to your peak or to your threshold where you feel that the weight's getting heavier, a little bit of swing is fine, as long as your chest is always up and you're constantly engaging the shoulder. Don't just rip it up and use momentum. Engage the shoulder, use the shoulder to draw the weight up, control it to come down. You're working the deltoid twice in that singular movement. Lifting it up, controlling it down. Lifting it up, controlling it down. That deltoid is working to there and to there if you control it. If you just let gravity take over, you're only getting 50% of the workout. So that is the lateral raise. I welcome any questions, I welcome any comments. I hope that helped. I hope more people can get better at this particular movement because it is one of the best shoulder developing movements you can do, and there's so many variations you could throw into it, whether it's a drop set, a king set. You can superset it with other shoulder movements like an upright row or a shoulder press. And then don't forget that the lateral raise only works primarily the lateral deltoid. You've also got the anterior deltoid and the posterior deltoid, which can be worked independently as well. So there's so many shoulder exercises to do. And there is one thing that I know, and that is getting older with strong shoulders is such a good thing. So make sure that you bulletproof your shoulders and age with strength. Any other questions, let me know. Otherwise, thank you for listening.